So these are the kind of things that irritate people. In addition, and this is, I think, the take on language that he has, basically words can always misrefer. They can always misrefer. Our meanings can always go astray. Even when we point, this is the most simple example analytic philosophers use. I can say, get me that cup there, and you could still pick up this one instead of this one. Pointing won't even guarantee a reference. And if it's possible to misrefer, if it's possible to misread, if it's possible to misunderstand, then it belongs to that structure I've called language to do those things, because a possibility once is a necessity forever. Let me say that again. A possibility once, when we speak in structural terms, is a necessity forever. This is what makes original sin so interesting. Human beings who don't sin are still sinners in the Christian tradition because the possibility once is the necessity forever. The possibility once is the necessity forever. Now, these are subtle views. Derrida is frequently caricatured for these views. We would all like to hold theories of meaning that made fundamental experiences like pointing, what meaning was about, and so on. But I don't think Derrida's views lead to, what I'd like to give you now is what I would call the upshot of some of the views, and I don't think they're that outrageous. The upshot, as I've said, is that there will be no final interpretations in philosophy, and I think the history of metaphysics bears that out, and the history of philosophy. There will be no last books. Even the Bible wasn't a last book. I wonder how many commentaries have been written on it. There will be no last books, no final commentaries, no ends to the flows of information. Meaning is not fixable or fixed, even humanly in a certain way. Since we speak the language of metaphysics in a certain sense, I've already talked about potentiality, appearance, and so on, in a strange way, language has a power to operate in the radical absence of man. I used the example of my own death in the laundry in the list for my wife, but there are many other examples. You find, as it were, a monument in stone, and you can decipher the cuneiform. And that form of man, again, the ideological term, has disappeared for ages of time. But the words, as materiality, still can be interpreted, not finally, but they still have their effects. Their effects. Now, to some of the political upshot of Derrida and why I think he does outrage people. Looking at philosophical language as metaphorical, largely metaphorical. In fact, if you've understood what I've just said about Derrida, you'll see that the sense in which it's frequently said that for Derrida all words are metaphorical. By that he means that no word is the thing. The word horse is not a horse. The word cat is not a cat. The word neutrino is not itself a neutrino. There are some exceptions, but not really. Is the word a word? No, because I have mentioned it and not used it. It's now become a token of a word. So what I'm trying to say here is that words are not things. That the attempt that philosophers have made to hook words to the world has failed, but it's no cause for anyone to think that we're not talking about anything. See, this doesn't make the world disappear. It just makes language into the muddy, material, somewhat confused practice that it actually is. Or that, at least, according to Derrida, it actually is. Now, here's some of the upshot of it that I think has caused people to be upset. Not only this business about better and worse readings, which people go, well, what's a better reading of something? Damn it, nothing means anything anymore. These are some of the things that upset them. everything can't be a metaphor. I mean, sometimes I mean what I say, damn it, and I just mean it. I mean, these kind of frustrated remarks by professors who've been around a long time. The most irritating thing of all, and I think I'll read a short passage if I have time. Am I running? I think my time's running okay. I'll take a very short passage because it's particularly irritating. In his article, White Mythology, Derrida makes the point about the metaphorical nature of philosophical language. And I think he makes it in a rather humorous way. He uses a story from Anatole France, in which Anatole France is giving an analysis of a philosophical passage, and he takes the following passage. Anatole France does. Derrida's just discussing it. Wherefore I was on the right road when I investigated this sentence. And here's the sentence investigated by Anatole France. The spirit possesses God in proportion as it participates in the absolute. I think that's actually a sentence from Hegel. Now, Anatole France goes on to say, it was important to see that these words were signs that had, as it were, changed meanings and shifted through time. It was important that we were able to do a translation. The spirit possesses God in proportion as it participates in the absolute. What is this, if not a collection of little symbols, much worn and defaced, I admit. Symbols which have lost their original brilliance, how they must have sounded maybe in Greece or maybe even in 19th century Germany. Their original brilliance and picturesqueness, but which still, by the nature of things, remain symbols. And I have been able, without sacrificing fidelity, to substitute one for the other, to as it were, update this into a more modern. And in this way, I've arrived at the following translation. The breath is seated on the shining one in the bushel of the part it takes in what is altogether loosed or subtle. And then we get the next step of translation. He whose breath is a sign of life, man that is, we will find a place, no doubt after the breath has been exhaled, in the divine fire, source and home of life, and this place will be meted out to him according to the virtue that has been given him by demons, I imagine, of sending abroad his warm breath, this little invisible soul, across the free expanse, the blue sky, most likely. And now observe, says Anatole France, and now observe, the phrase has acquired quite the ring of some fragment of a Vedic hymn, just by returning it to sort of its original meanings of absolute, God, and so on, just by returning it to those meanings when they had their brilliance and their sort of lifetime.